Welcome to Email Autopsy. I'm Brendan Ziolo, and I've spent years in B2B marketing, writing, sending, and yes, occasionally cringing at emails.
And I'm Pauline Gabitsis. I'm a behavioral scientist who studies why people do or don't respond to what lands in their inbox.
Every episode, we take a real email apart through the marketer's eyes and the scientist's lens.
We'll show you exactly what's working, what isn't with some fixes, and the psychology behind all of it. Welcome to episode 3 of Email Autopsy. We've covered the subject line and preview text, the two things that decide whether your email gets opened. And today, we're going inside the email to look at the body copy. The body copy is the purpose of your email. Whether you send your email to notify customers of a new feature, to get them to sign up for a conference or a webinar, or to simply get them to leave a review, there is a reason why you sent your email in the first place. And I hope it doesn't come as a surprise to our listeners, but the way that you craft the body of your email completely dictates if your recipient acts. Body copy is a big topic, so we've split this episode out into 2 parts. Today is part 1, where we're going to be looking at the job of an email to provide clarity to its users, helping someone understand a feature and actually use that feature. In the next episode, part 2, we'll tackle a harder job, which is getting someone to actually open up their wallet. Brendan and I have pulled several emails from our inboxes to look at what makes good email copy and bad copy, particularly when we're trying to get people to try a new feature. So Brendan, I'll let you kick us off and show our audience what we've pulled first.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was a bit surprised when I opened this email because it looks like it's a good email at the start. You know, it's from a company and launching their latest developer platform. And clearly there's lots to tell, but then I started to scroll and then I scrolled. And then I scrolled, and wait, there was more scrolling. This is not an exaggeration, what we have up here. We actually had to use multiple screenshots and squeeze them all in. So long story short, this is a long email, and that's what doesn't work here. And it's not only that it's long, there's a lot of different things. So I think I counted 8 or 9 features they're highlighting. They have several code snippets. There's a customer quote. And then if by chance you got to the end, there's not one postscript. I think there's 3 or 4. So they kept adding to it as well. Just out of curiosity, I printed it, and it's an 11-page email when you save it as a PDF. I mean, I think most white papers are probably shorter than that today. It's clearly long, and there's a lot in here, and there definitely needs to be some work done on that front. But I'm not surprised this happens. I mean, I see it all the time where, it's a big product launch, a lot of work has gone in. There's a lot of people involved, especially at larger companies, and they all want to get the piece in. So there's nothing wrong with highlighting the feature. There's nothing wrong with code snippets if that works for your audience. Customer quotes are always great, but you can't put them all in one email, and that's what happens here. So someone needs to get a handle on this, but I'm sure there's other things that's not doing well. Pauline, I'll let you take a stab.
I think for me, the real challenge here is what you said earlier, Brendan, which is you have so many different people who want to get their feature into this email that it becomes so unruly, right? This is quite a long email. And when I went through it, there was no single thing that this email really wanted me to do. So there were lots of different calls to action. It asked me to install the CLI, read the docs, join different wait lists, watch a keynote, join or check the connections tab, over 5 calls to action. And when you give people too many options, too many choices, you don't actually increase their agency and their freedom of choice. What you do is you end up invoking what we call in psychology choice overload. So the best way to sort of describe choice overload is through a really classic jam study in psychology by 2 researchers, Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper. And these researchers set up a testing booth in a grocery store to see how variations in the amount of jam that are displayed in a grocery store influence the number of people that come to the sampling table and ultimately influence how many people end up buying that jam. So in the first hour, they showed a display with 24 jams. In the next hour, they showed a display of 6 jams, and they really were looking to see who was coming and who was buying. I don't think it'll come as a surprise, but when they showed 24 jams, lots of people showed up. There was a lot of interest in what was going on in this display, but very few people ended up actually purchasing that jam. Only about 3% of the people who stopped at the display ended up going on to buy a jar of jam. Now compare this to when they showed the 6 jam display. They saw less people coming to the display, but they saw 30% of people who stopped at the display actually ending up purchasing that jam. So that is a tenfold difference simply because they reduced the number of options available. So the lesson here is really that while showing lots of different features and lots of different options might in prospect sound really appealing, it really creates decision conflict. It does not serve your users well. When people are faced with too many choices and too many options, instead of making any one choice, they get worried, they procrastinate, they're not sure what they're supposed to do, and so they don't do anything. And I'll give this company the benefit of the doubt here because they are speaking to developers. So having a little bit more depth around what you're providing and what you're asking for might suit this audience, but certainly not 5 CTAs, certainly not over 11 pages, as you mentioned, Brendan. Really, when you're showcasing this number of options, you are creating that jam problem.
Let's take a look at an email that does at least does a better job of this, and it really comes down to prioritizing and simplifying. This is an email from our friends at Anthropic, and while it's not a feature launch email, it's more of an onboarding email. I mean, there's a lot of features they could talk about, but clearly someone sat down and decided these are the two or three things we want to highlight. Basically applies some of the core principles in this book from a Harvard professor, Todd Rogers, called Writing for Busy Readers. Does a really good job of, making sure it's skimmable, making sure the messages jump out, making sure it translates some of the technical aspects into more simple language. And it also echoes a quote that's attributed to one of my favorite authors, Mark Twain. And he said, I would have written a shorter letter. I just didn't have the time. And I think a lot of people face that. They want to get the email out. There's some urgency to it. They want to tell everyone, and they just don't take the time to do a better job of a simpler email. Anthropic does a good job from a skimmability perspective. I love how they've taken out projects, artifacts, connect. It's bolded. There's also some nice icons beside it. So, as most people do, they're going to skim this email, and those are the three things that jump out rather than pages and pages of text. And maybe even better, there is a very clear what they want you to do. It's in a box, so it jumps out. It's very try it on your work. So, I mean, the copy there is great. And there's basically a button that, go do it. So, I think it's really great how they simplified things here, but the call to action is super clear. When you're writing your emails, give it that skimmable test. Make sure you have only one CTA, and you'll have a much more effective email than pages and pages where you're telling the readers everything.
This is such a great email that you pulled, Brendan, and such a good example of why you really want to be prioritizing those features. If we have used AI, everyone knows that there are so many different elements and features that they could have put in this email, but they chose to be really purposeful and selective, and it works. I pulled this email. This is sort of a bonus, but I thought it was really fitting for what we're talking about today, particularly when it comes to feature launches. This one's from Customer IO. And the reason I really like it is because if you've worked in email for long enough, you've probably sent a newsletter at some point with the wrong subject line. And that is exactly what happened here. Customer IO set out to promote a new feature, like the other emails that you have seen in this episode. But this email went out with last month's subject line. So instead of learning about editing campaign triggers, which was last month's subject line, they opened and it was something completely different. So here's what most companies do when that happens. They fire off a sterile, sorry, sent you the wrong email or correction email, right? Not that exciting. But Customer IO, what they did was the complete opposite. They really leaned into this mistake and had fun with it. They led with this arrested development gif. I've made a huge mistake. They owned up to their mistake completely, and then they still were able to work in that feature that they wanted to release, that core CTA that they wanted to share with folks. And they closed with this line that I really, really like, which was sorry for the double inbox, but hopefully a little human error in an AI world is refreshing. And I adore this example because it's such a powerful way to humanize communications and build trust with your audience. I think it is worth noting that Customer IO gets away with a bit more of a humorous apology email because of the brand that they've built for themselves. There's a lot of research speaking to this, but blunders tend to work really well when you're viewed as a competent person in general. So if you're a newer company or your brand does not have as much pull right now in the market, you may not want to send an apologetic email as funny as this because it actually leans more into a sloppy looking email than it does look into a small self-aware slip. So be careful about when you're using these types of humorous emails, but generally speaking, especially because of the brand reputation that Customer IO has, I thought this was a really nice, really clever way to still show people the feature and make up for a mistake that happened along the way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm a big fan of humor in marketing. I don't think it's used as often as it should, but you're totally right. It does depend on the brand and it can fall flat too. But I think the other thing beside the humor on this email, and the Anthropic email did it well, is I mean, less is more. I can't say that frequently enough. Probably going to say it on every episode of Email Autopsy, but it definitely applies to the body copy. And in addition to that, though, the other really important thing is that single action you want the reader to take. You just can't inundate them with multiple things that you want them to do. And both the Anthropic and even the Customer IO one, I mean, their Customer IO was using humor and apologizing, but there was still only one thing they wanted you to do. They wanted you to check out the new feature they were supposed to talk about in the first email. So when you're writing your emails, make sure you go back and read through them. And if there's multiple, go to see a webinar or sign up here or try this out, simplify it. Simplify it for that core one action you want them to take as well. Are there any other takeaways you have on body copy so far, Pauline?
One other takeaway to build on your key action point is to think about that Todd Rogers book that Brendan spoke about earlier and really make your email skimmable. So read your email as if you were a busy reader, as if you had just opened this in your inbox and it's not part of your job, right? Read the first 2 or 3 words of every line and see, based off of that, am I able to get the gist of what this email is all about? And if not, if the meaning of your email is hidden and buried in the middle of the copy, in the middle of your text, then you may want to revise and show more important pieces of information in bold, use bullet points, and really think about how to improve for skimmability. So that's a wrap for today. Stay tuned for our next episode where we look at body copy for emails that are higher stakes, looking at trying to get users to actually open their wallet and buy something. See you next time. If you found this useful, subscribe, leave us a comment, and share it with whoever in your organization is responsible for your email marketing.
And here's something we'd really love. Send us a real email and we'll weave it into a future episode or have a personalized email autopsy session with you. The link is in the description. No deck, no pitch, just book a time.
We're Email Autopsy. See you next episode.